Hello, welcome to the TCPalm editorial board meeting to interview candidates in the election for 19th Judicial Circuit Judge, Group 2. I'm Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and I'm joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, and Blake Fontenay, columnist. Special thanks to candidate Leatha Mullins for meeting with us today and streamlining this process by completing a questionnaire ahead of time. Board members have reviewed it. Candidate Alexander Stuart Nelson initially said he would join us tonight, but this morning let us know that he would not attend. Questionnaires and replays of our editorial board interviews will be found at tcpalm.com/elections. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. I'll lead the questioning and open it up to other editorial board members at the end. We might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in about 20 to 30 minutes. We just ask that you keep your answers concise, but we do have a little bit more time tonight because it's only you, Leatha. So let's start off maybe by telling us what you think is the most important asset a circuit judge can have. How are you prepared to provide that?
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I think it's important to get in touch with the voters and let them know about their judicial candidates. I think what one of the attributes that a judge should have is to have a very calm demeanor on the bench and to be able to listen to the parties that come before the judge. It's crucial that a judge listen to all of the evidence and all of the arguments before and not prejudge the case until everyone has had their opportunity to be heard. I have had experience doing this for the last 5 years as a general magistrate and as a child support enforcement hearing officer. And I think that training has really elevated me to be prepared to take the job as the next circuit judge.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, can you explain your judicial philosophy, if you have one, in plain English?
Yeah, I think that it's the job of the judiciary to interpret the laws and not make them. A judge should not legislate from the bench. That's the job of the legislature. That's why we have a separation of powers in our Constitution. It's the foundation of our government, the 3 branches. So I think the judiciary judges need to follow the law instead of make them.
Okay, thank you. So you've been on the bench as a magistrate for 5 years, you said. Can you talk about what your judicial temperament has been over that time? How would you describe it?
Well, just to be clear, in 2017, I was appointed as the child support enforcement hearing officer out of a pool of 65 candidates. And I served in that role for a little over 3 years. In 2020, when Magistrate Catherine Hammond retired, I was elevated to her position as general magistrate covering the assignment in Indian River and also St. Lucie counties. I have a reputation of being fair but firm. When I was considering to apply for the child support enforcement hearing officer, I actually, I gave it a lot of thought because it meant closing my practice that I'd had for over 17 years. That meant the clients that I had, I would have to give them to other attorneys in the area. And one of the things that I did is I talked to fellow judges whether it would be a good move for me. But what really made me decide to go forward with applying for that position is I went into court and watched the person that I would be replacing. And I was very disappointed in what I saw. And it's not good it's not my practice to criticize other people, especially on the bench, but the circumstances that were surrounding the opening, we won't go into. But what I saw is when pro se litigants would come before the bench or in these hearings, they were not getting an opportunity to be heard. And that really bothered me because that's at the crux of our judicial system. The temperament of the person that was sitting on the bench, and he's no longer with us, but I thought he was representing the judiciary as a whole. And that's not what we need to have represent the judiciary. The judiciary should be calm and listen and give everyone the opportunity to be heard. When I was appointed that position, I made it a goal to make sure that everyone who came into my courtroom would have that opportunity. And whenever I have people, and this has happened several times, when they were in front of me and we heard their case and the ruling didn't necessarily go their way, they still said to me, "Thank you for giving me a fair hearing." And that is the biggest reward of being on the bench that you can hear a litigant say. And just another note for that, when I've been on the campaign trail since February, and I was working a gun show, and I had someone come up to my table and, say, "Oh, I see you're running for judge." I didn't recognize her immediately, but her voice was very distinct. But I still engaged her and I said, "Oh, yes, thank you very much." She wished me luck. And then all of a sudden she said, "I just wanted to let you know that I know you didn't rule in my favor, but you really helped me. You guided me and you gave me a fair hearing." And then it clicked where I recognized the voice. She had appeared in front of me at a hearing, and this is where I was a magistrate on a family law case. She had been in my courtroom probably 6 weeks before. And I remembered her. And then I said, "Oh, thank you very much. That means a lot to me. But don't you have a hearing coming up next week?" And she says, "I do." And I said, "Well, thank you so much. I really have to disclose this when I call the case, so the other side can be aware that we talked outside of the courtroom." But in any event, my point is, I think that when those things come back to me, that is telling me that my judicial temperament is intact and in place, and that I'm doing something right there. Sorry for the long answer, Larry, but it's really important to get out there.
No problem. Thank you for the answer. Well, that kind of leads into another question, which is, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a judge? Was it years ago or was it recently? How did you come to that realization?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. The idea first came into my head when I was in the 4th grade. So when I was in 4th grade, I was raised by a single parent. My parents divorced when I was about 5 years old, and my father moved away. So basically, my mother raised 3 kids on her own. And some of the days I would have to go to her work after school. She worked at the local courthouse. She worked for the prosecutor, and she also worked for the local magistrate, which is our version of a county judge. She was their assistant. So I would go, and while she worked, I would watch court proceedings for entertainment. And then during the summer, I would ask her, "Can I go to work with you today?" And I would sit there all day and watch it. And I just knew, like, I want to do that someday. And so I worked hard. We weren't wealthy. We were rich in pride and faith and, strong work ethic. But I worked hard, and I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. I went to college on scholarships, on student loans, and I worked a full-time job while I handled a full-time class schedule. So I knew I wanted to start my career as a prosecutor, and I did. And I did that for about 5 years. Then I opened my own practice in downtown Fort Pierce, and I did that for 17 years. So during that time, I did some criminal defense work because I had great training as a prosecutor. I then transitioned into family law. I became a certified guardian ad litem. And as a guardian ad litem, people don't really know the aspects of that, but I would be appointed to represent to do a report in the best interest of the children, and which followed the statutory language that a judge would follow in the case. So I was in that area, I was able to not really be an advocate, but to be more of a neutral party, that like a judge would review the facts and circumstances of a case. And then I went into I became a Supreme Court certified family law mediator. So there I was helping to resolve cases between folks. And the reason that's important is that started me transitioning, my career into that neutral party, obviously, that would result, end up being like a judge. And so then that's when the hearing officer spot came open. And I thought, well, maybe I'm a firm believer in opportunity. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to see if that's really, if it fits, see if this is what I want, because running for judge is a huge investment. It's not only a huge investment monetarily, but frankly, it's time consuming. I am a full-time candidate at this point. I am working more hours than I worked as a magistrate going out there on the campaign trail. So I think just the timing in my career essentially put me at this point. I never wanted to run against a colleague. I have so much respect for all of the judges that I've worked with. And there was an open seat that came up this year. And so that's why I threw in my name. And that's what brought me here. So again, long answer, but I've been around for a while. So.
Well, thanks. You answered a couple of my questions there. So I appreciate that. That was good.
Sure thing.
What's the most complicated case you've ever handled?
Well, you mean as an attorney or on the bench?
Could be whatever you like.
Okay. Well,
something that challenged you.
Okay. Well, I know I have quite a bit of stories there. I'll try to be quick with them. But as a prosecutor, there was a case that I sat second chair with the lead counsel, and a child was abducted in Lakewood Park, and she was taken. The defendant drove her to a remote location, sexually assaulted her, and left her there. And it was during a terrible torrential downpour. So the person was finally arrested. Again, I could go into great detail on it, but the little girl did not want to testify. She was scared to death, and I participate. I was trying to get to know her. I was brought on the case because I had training in some child sex crimes. I would prosecute them, but and because I was female, I didn't have attributes of the defendant. And she still, even after I was getting to know her, building rapport, she still didn't want to testify. So that was a difficult case, prosecuting it without the participation of a victim. But he was ultimately convicted, and he is serving a life sentence. But there was another case that I had that was very difficult, in that when I was defense attorney, this was a family case, and my client, I represented the father, and a child had made allegations against him that were sexual in nature, of touching and such. Well, thankfully, the counselor who had interviewed the child had taped it. Because when I watched the video, having all the experience and training I received at the state attorney's office and handling these child sex cases, I looked at this videotape and I go, this is the case. This is an example of what you should never do in a child sex case, and how interviewing a child. So my client, I told him we need to get an expert. So I found an expert. I sent the tape. I sent the report. I didn't send anything else because I didn't want to taint her viewing. And when she reviewed it, and she speaks on a national level, and she had just spoken at a national conference when she called me to tell me her results. And she said, I want to use this videotape as an example of what not to do. And I, got chills, obviously. So I wanted to use her in my trial, but it was expensive and my client didn't have the money. So what was challenging about that case is I had to try the case without my expert, but we did it. And the expert was the counselor who interviewed her. We ended up keeping all of her testimony out. Even the trier of fact found that she was not competent to testify. So it was a very challenging case, and it was emotional too, because client didn't have enough funds. The allegations were just the worst that could ever be made against a parent. And the pressure of going in to trial without an expert who would have benefited my client was really a lot of pressure, but we ended up winning that case.
Okay, thank you. Next question. As you know, you've been both a prosecutor and a criminal defense lawyer, but have you seen a racial disparity in sentencing in this circuit? And if so, what can a judge do about it?
Well, I know there was an article that came out a few years ago about that, and I'm not so sure that it's really a fair article, because a lot of, the thing that holds our system together, the criminal justice system, is plea bargaining. So if we didn't have plea negotiations in criminal defense cases, our system would fall apart. There's no way that the system could handle trials in every case. So I think that there's a lot of components to that. If there is racial disparity, I think that it has to be addressed at all levels, not just the judiciary, but the state attorney, the defense counsel. If there are any implicit biases, I think that they have to be addressed at all levels.
Okay, thank you. You alluded to the fact that plea bargains are important in the system that we have. Well, let's go over to case management for a second. Especially.
I'm sorry, Larry, you broke up a little. Could you start? Use something about something for a second. I didn't hear that first part.
Sure, I'm sorry. Since the pandemic, case management has been an issue. You talked about plea bargains and it being an essential part of the system. But since, case management has been really important since the pandemic. So what examples can you give us from your past jobs on how you are up to handle the task of managing a heavy workload?
Oh boy, when I can answer that on a couple levels. When I came on as the child support enforcement hearing officer, I came into, and keep in mind that I was the only hearing officer in the circuit, so I traveled to each county. I had a home base in St. Lucie. I did court in St. Lucie 2 days a week. Then I did Okeechobee one day, Indian River one day, and Martin County one day. So I covered the whole circuit. When I came into that position, it was a paper division. So the orders were handwritten. They had to be walked up to the judge's office. They had to be signed by the judge, because as a hearing officer, I make recommendations. I don't order things. The judge will adopt my recommendations and sign. So you'll get a signature from me and a signature from the judge on those orders. So the orders had to be walked up, and then they would have to be fed into a scanner or the copier, what have you, and ultimately processed. Very time consuming. So when I came on, we had a goal of switching from a paper to paperless system. Keep in mind, I'm dealing with 4 different clerk's offices, 5 different judges, the Department of Revenue, and other agencies that are involved. So I actually handled that. We were able to process that over my time there, and so it ultimately saved us time, and it saved us money, the taxpayers' money, because every one of those would have to be mailed out. And then with the case management issue with the general magistrate, when I came on, COVID was at the forefront when I took over for Magistrate Hammond. The day that I was offered the job is the day that our court system shut down. So the administrative family law judge and I immediately talked about Zoom getting Zoom installed across the circuit. You can have your free version or get the license. So we worked at getting the licenses for that. And then we had to start training not only our colleagues, but also the attorneys in the area. We also had to get the Department of Revenue on board, which, we contacted Tallahassee, invited them to join our training sessions so they could see how efficient it would be. Because if the child support division shuts down, then there's going to be people not getting child support. It's essential to keep these things going. So we immediately started doing that. And we kept those non-essential hearings going. We really weren't down for very long. However, since the pandemic, there's been an increase in divorce filings, then dissolution of marriage filings, and also in post-dissolution. So we have, as a division, worked together in each county to tackle the case management in each and every county. We're working together with the case managers, with the magistrates, with the judges, so we can get all of that caseload down. That's the first thing I've done in both divisions is I have looked at what is open, what hasn't been tried. Let's get these folks in to have their case heard, and let's close these cases so the clerks and the system isn't bombarded with it. So I think we've done a really great job attacking the case management issues. And if I am elected as circuit judge, whatever assignment that I'm assigned to, that will be the first thing that I do, is look at what is open on the docket so we can work to get that down.
Okay, thank you. Adam, Blake, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I have a couple of quick ones. One going back to the discussion about your background growing up as a child in a single parent household. How has that informed your work on family law cases?
Oh, tremendously. I was probably about 5 when my parents split up, and I think that what I bring to the table, Blake, is I've experienced what the litigants have experienced. I have seen a mother who is working diligently to pay the bills. I've seen a father who has checked out. I mean, I would visit every now and then, but a lot of times that child support check didn't come through. And even there's been aspects of domestic violence that I've seen in my past. I think that it's just made me aware of issues. That's why when I started that family law practice, I love that area, because you're dealing with children who are affected, children who have to grow up very quickly, mothers, fathers. I've had the fathers who think that the system is all one-sided. And some of my greatest clients have been the fathers that come in with this attitude that judges are pro-mother. Well, those 3 men now have a different view, because those 3 men now have, they're the majority time-sharing parent of their children. We actually were able to get it changed. And when it's post-dissolution, the standard is much higher, but we were able to do that. And I'm proud that the stereotype is shifting, that it is that either parent, we're looking at the parents, not at the gender. So I just think that my experiences growing up has just lended a deeper understanding of what my clients are going through when I was a practitioner, and what the litigants are going through when they stand before me.
Thank you. One other question. You were talking a minute ago about the use of Zoom in case management. And obviously, COVID brought about a lot of changes in the way video conferencing was used by the courts. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on where we're headed now that the COVID epidemic seems to be easing a bit. Are there some changes that were made as a result of that you think can and should remain in place in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, I do. I think that Zoom is here to stay. I do think that there are some hearings and trials that are essential that need to take place in person. But there are docket calls, there are short non-evidentiary hearings, or even short evidentiary hearings that can be held via Zoom. We have all this technology. In the beginning, people were so hesitant. It's hard to train people to do new things, but let me tell you, once we walked them through, held their hands, showed them it's not so bad, boy, their attitude has changed tremendously, because they can be in two different cities in the same day, in the same morning. They don't have to leave the comfort of their own office. There's lawyers that are setting up their conference rooms that looks like a courtroom, which is fantastic. And what I really love about it is when I was practicing or hearing dependency cases, there will be, on any given day for judicial reviews, there might be 50, 60 participants, because we have representatives from all the agencies, we have all the parents, and we have more parents being involved in their cases, which is so important. We ask them to come to court, but they have jobs, and then they sit in court for half of a day. They're losing money while they're waiting for their case to be called. So I think that Zoom is, a lot of them now will Zoom in from their workplace. They'll get to take a break, so they're able to still work and make a living. And I just think that we're going to be able to develop some procedures and protocols to keep Zoom, especially in the family division. I know with the criminal division, I haven't worked in that area with Zoom, but I think that some judges are incorporating it for docket calls and things like that. For jury trials, I really think that needs to be in person. Same thing with termination of parental rights. That needs to be in person. And but Zoom is here to stay. And I think that there'll be some type of bifurcated system, or as far as whether it's in person or virtual.
Anybody else? Blake, Adam? Okay, anything else, Ms. Mullins, that you'd like to let us know about?
Well, something I failed to mention, and it'll probably gain a chuckle. I was telling you about what I did as a hearing officer and what I did as a magistrate. The circuit last year recognized my efforts in both of those areas by presenting me with a leadership award. I was completely stunned. I had actually nominated my assistant for a Rising Star award, and I showed up with flowers in case, whether or not she won, she totally deserved it, and also a case manager. And lo and behold, they announced my name on one of the leadership awards. So I was very humbled and appreciative of that. And the reason I want to bring that up is I want the voters to know that you're going to get that work ethic, that strong work ethic, and the training that I've had over the last 5 years on the bench. I am prepared and I'm ready to serve as your circuit judge, and I would appreciate their support.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight, and good luck in the campaign. And to anybody watching out there, thank you for watching. You can watch this video and other videos we do over the course of the upcoming fall and winter election seasons at TCPalm.com, or on our Facebook pages sometimes, or our YouTube page, definitely. So thanks again for joining, and again, good luck in the race.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Adam, Blake, and Larry. Take care.